I wanted it to go. There we go. Okay, we can start whenever. Okay, hello friends. It's Shanika and not Caitlin from
No.
Get Checkered. Get Checkered is part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown and community supported. We wanted to give a shout out to a fellow Alberta Podcast Network member, Emily Missed Out, where Emily and Brianne take in pop culture filled movie classics that Emily's never seen but should have. You can learn more about that podcast at albertapodcastnetwork.com. I just think it's a really fun premise, and they talk about all the classics that we love. So make sure you go check it out. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's myself, but not Caitlin. Caitlin is flying back home right now, I think, as we speak, from Hawaii. So our new contributor is kind of being thrown into the deep end a little bit. Courtney, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. I will say that
Good.
race was a bit much,
It was a lot. It was a lot.
right? It was not what I was expecting. To start today, we're going to walk through or talk through some weekly updates and then head into Courtney. Will be doing all the track facts. So thank you, Caitlin, for taking up all those notes. Then we'll quickly run through qualifying because I don't think any of you care. And then to talk about race day and sort of what's happening post race, because it's surprisingly, you would think that now that it's 1:36 where I am, way later in Abu Dhabi, that it would be over. But it seems like it's still not, it's over in some ways, but not fully over. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of insane. The first article I wanted to mention is from the Toronto Star. I know I didn't think I'd be giving a shout out to the Toronto Star, but they had a great article about how Netflix and the epic championship battle that we all just saw today made Formula One Canada's fastest growing sport. And that's basically why Get Checkered exists, because we saw that a lot of headlines were being made across Canada about the sport, and there wasn't a lot of women talking about it in this space at all. So it's kind of a great little article. I'll make sure to link it in the description. But Courtney, what do you think? I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I think it's 100% accurate. I mean, there's so many people on my Instagram now that are posting about Formula One, and I'm like, the reason? Drive to Survive.
Yeah. And the only thing that makes me nervous is that now that everyone is watching, I'm like, are tickets going to be more expensive, like harder to get by?
I know.
We have a few that we'd like to go to. I know the Montreal Grand Prix tickets went on sale last week sometime. Courtney, you're nodding. Did you see, are you going?
Yeah, I got tickets.
Shut up. You're going to have so much fun.
I
Okay.
know. I'm so excited. I'm like, I have a countdown in my phone already. I'm so excited to go.
Well, hopefully up until then, we can get some more traction on the podcast so we can be media people at the race instead of just like a normie.
Yeah,
Not that
that's
there's
the
anything
goal.
wrong. Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. Caitlin and I don't have tickets to the Montreal Grand Prix. Truly did not know they were going on sale. Like, didn't know any of it. But I don't know. We'll figure it out. If we want to go, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I want to mention is that this is Kimmy's last week in Formula One. So there was a lot of articles just about his career and all the wonderful things he's done. I didn't have one that I pinpointed, but I do think it's just worth revisiting the brilliance of Kimi Räikkönen. I do think he should have been more of a world champion, but just maybe came up at the wrong time. So there's that. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is Oscar Piastri is officially the F2 champion. He joins a pretty prominent company. So this is his first season in F2. And the other people that have won it are George Russell and Charles Leclerc. He will be not in Formula One next year exactly. He will be a reserve driver for Alpine. So if anyone's curious where he's going to be headed, he'll somehow, I'm hoping we see him on the paddock soon, though. Hopefully.
I'm
Right?
sure we will. And definitely in Barcelona, there'll be so many videos of like testing and all that good stuff.
Exactly. So, it's good. I still have feelings about him not being able to join just simply because of money.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I know he said that he's aiming for 2023, and that's generally when a lot of the contracts are ending anyways. So I think he'll hopefully have his pick versus being kind of like pushed somewhere. He'll have options, which is
Mhm.
good for him. But yeah, that's kind of all the updates. And it wasn't surprising that it was light because all the focus was on being in Abu Dhabi and the final race of the season.
Yeah. Final race. So yeah, some track facts from the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So Abu Dhabi is located in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. It's the capital city and second most populous behind Dubai. It's still like 1.5 million people,
Jesus.
which is insane. Um, it's mostly located on the island of the Persian Gulf and connected to the mainland through several bridges. It's a center for politics and industry, and it accounts for approximately 2/3 of the United Arab Emirates economy. So, not sure what percent wise for like oil and gas, but they make a huge, huge money off of that. So,
I'm not
yeah,
surprised. Being from Alberta, we hear about it a lot.
yeah, the oil capital of Canada.
Yeah, basically.
um, so the race was held on it's so funny, like everyone we were watching the race this morning, they're like the Yes
The
Marina circuit.
yes.
And every time I was dying. So it's not actually located in Abu Dhabi, it's about 30 minutes away. And then it's believed to be the most expensive circuit in history, having been constructed for F1, I know, on a man-made island and cost like $1 billion.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah,
They
that's
just have
some real coin.
just so much money in the UAE. I have
I know.
like I would love to have a little bit of that. Holy hell.
Like 1% of that
Would
could
be
do us
great.
so well. Yeah. Like life changing. And they're like, yeah, here you go. Here's $1 billion. The construction involved 14,000 staff and 35 million construction man hours to make that track. The Abu Dhabi 2019 Grand Prix was the first major event to take place on the circuit, and the contract is in place until 2030. So, like what, 9 more years of Abu Dhabi,
Yep.
which okay. Still, I think there's still some controversy there
Oh, 100%.
relating to our last episode, but
Yeah, we don't love being in the Middle East. And like I said, it's not just a knock on the Middle East. It's also there's countries in Europe as well when it comes to
yeah,
human rights and just political and socioeconomic issues. So it,
yeah,
I don't know, does, okay, maybe we're naive to think that Formula One could have a moral compass. Like, I don't know.
maybe we would hope so.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, so the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is a dusk race, so it's kind of under the lights, but also you get that nice sunset. So it's a day to night race.
Mhm.
For this year, the turns 4, 5, and 6 were redesigned into a hairpin, along with turns 11, 12, and 13 also being reconfigured into a sweeping banked curve. So a bit of a tweak from last year. 16 turns, 5.28 kilometers in length, and 58 laps. So the previous lap record was Lewis in 2019. Previous winners were 2020 was Max, 2019 Lewis, 2018 Lewis, 2017 Valtteri, 2016 Lewis, 2015 Nico Rosberg, and 2014, take a guess, Lewis.
Lewis.
so Lewis, Max. So a lot of Mercedes history at Abu Dhabi, but Max did win last year.
So, I mean, that's maybe a telling sign of what was to come today.
Yeah, he foreshadowed the next season.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
the tires for this race were the softest set of slicks, so Pirelli C3, 4, and 5. Medium ranking for almost everything for traction, braking, lateral, tire stress, asphalt, abrasion, downforce, and all that good stuff. So that's kind of a rundown on the track.
Yeah. And I think what's important to note with the medium ranking for everything, like tires and tire choices are significant, but with it being somewhere in the middle, it's not as significant as you think. Obviously, with
Mhm.
this race, there was significance. We'll get into it, but
Ugh.
generally speaking, when there is that middle tier, even medium, low, specifically on the asphalt grip, it's kind of like it isn't scary in any way.
Yeah.
We'll talk about quali and then the race itself just after this ad break. With Pod Power, our sponsors are making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, Edmonton Community Foundation is helping us give a Pod Power shout out to Book Woman. Book Woman is a podcast about editing, publishing, and writing Indigenous stories. Three Métis librarians representing nations from across the homeland aim to inspire Indigenous peoples to share their stories in whatever form they may enjoy. Guests include Indigenous storytellers from diverse mediums like podcasting, burlesque, books, comics, social media, films, music, and everything in between. You can listen and find out more at bookwomanpodcast.ca. All right. So going into qualifying, did you end up watching any of it?
Um, so I watched it while I was at work actually. So I was kind of in and out.
Yeah.
But it was on in the background.
Full disclosure, I feel like Caitlin and I say this all the time. We watch the highlights most of the time, rarely watch the actual racing,
Yeah.
but I have some notes. So when it came to free practice, it was fairly uneventful. So Max went quickest with Lewis in P2. And the race took place in the daytime, the practice, sorry, took place in the daytime though. So it wasn't a really good indicator of what qualifying or the race itself was going to be like, because in the daytime, it's way hotter than at dusk, obviously. Free practice two, Lewis was in first. Esteban Ocon surprised me, but he was in second, and then Valtteri in third. Max did nearly the same time as Lewis, but he exceeded track limits, so his time was deleted. And yes, okay, so Valtteri ended up hitting the wall at turn 14 with his right rear wheel, while Nicholas Latifi damaged the rear wing of his Williams going into a spin in turn 13. Kimi Raikkonen shunted at turn 14, damaging three corners of his Alfa Romeo. And I was sad about this one, I'll be honest, because you want Kimi in his final weekend of Formula One to just have the best racing, right? Like, even
Right.
if it's free practice, like, fuck it. You just don't want any damage on his car. You want him to just enjoy himself. And it just find his way. With FP3, the majority of drivers were in hard compound tires. However, the Red Bulls were on mediums and the Mercedes drivers were on softs, just to see what happens. And they, of course, end up being quickest ish by the end of free practice 3. So Lewis was in first, Max in second, and Valtteri in P3. Qualifying, again, not very eventful. So in Q1, Lewis, Valtteri, and Max led the way, with Williams, Haas, and Kimi being knocked out. Again, though, devastating for Kimi because it's his last freaking weekend. I was like, dude, this is not going your way right now.
Yeah.
In Q2, it was Max, Sergio, and Lewis. And then Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Sebastian Vettel were knocked out. And then in Q3, it was Max Lewis and your boy ended up
Yeah.
P3. How did you feel?
Yeah. Oh my God. So I work at a gym, and I was checking people into the class, and all I see, I have my eye on the computer beside me, and I saw Lando was on his like fast lap, and I was like, come on, come on. And I took someone's temperature and I saw Norris slide up to third, and I was like, ah! Like I was screaming. I was so happy. I was in
I
love.
I know. I was like, I had a feeling. I was like, if anyone's going to be excited about this, it's going to be you. I was surprised to see him up there too. So I don't know what energy he had or threw into that car, but to
Yeah.
place that highly, splitting both the Valtteri ended up farther down. We'll talk about that in a second, but at least where Perez was and Mercedes, that's huge and also good for them in terms of positioning for,
Mhm.
them and the constructors. So I was impressed. I just wasn't expecting it today.
I know. I know.
Speaking, like I mentioned, with the issues, Valtteri had a really tough time during qualifying. Even though he did show up in Q1, he ended up having to swap to a new engine after the race because of whatever issues he was having. So I think that's quite telling. It probably was what was screwing up his qualifying.
Mhm.
Again, though, this is someone that's leaving this team that he's been at for 7-8 years. So I was sad for him because I'm like, you want to be qualifying higher, like no car issues. That's the dream for all these people that are going through a lot of change the next little bit. And
Yeah,
it just was not in his favor.
I know.
And yeah. So when it comes to race day, I think Courtney, we can just like alternate, I guess, a little bit talking about the teams
Yeah,
and
that
adding
works.
commentary as it goes. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this time we tried to break things up by teams because this is also where we know the final standings for everyone um, in the constructors and also for the drivers championship. So starting at the very bottom of the pack, I literally heard nothing from Haas the entire race. I think like one thing was mentioned, which was when Mick and Nicholas Latifi were kind of battling it out, and then a turn later, Nicholas Latifi goes off. But other than that, literally nothing. Um, the person that we never talk about ended up getting COVID, so they didn't compete. And I wonder how Gunther Steiner feels because they're ending the season with 0 points in the constructors, which I feel like has been consistent over the last few years.
Yeah.
And Mick finishes in 19th, and the other dude finishes in 21st. And can we just take a second to talk about how that is hilarious? Because
I know.
as we know, there's only 20 drivers in Formula One, but Robert Kubica, I think he drove for Kimi Räikkönen, right?
Yeah,
During
when
when
he
Kim
had COVID.
when he had COVID, and somehow Robert Kubica is actually finishing in 20th. I just
Like, how does that happen?
I just didn't know where to put him either. I was like, how do we talk about this? I don't know how that happens. If anyone else
One
could
good
tell us
race.
how that happens, please let us know
Yeah,
because
let us know.
it's embarrassing. But Courtney, what do you think for today's race? And I know we're going to do a larger episode on like our favorite moments of 2021. We talked about jobs earlier before we started recording. Do you think Gunther Steiner should keep his team principal job at looking at where the season ended up?
I mean, I want to say yes. I think it's a hard team to manage because they just don't have the funds.
Yeah.
The car is clearly the worst on the grid. So it's like, I feel like he's just doing his best. And I
It,
mean, I feel like he always just gets the short end of the stick with drivers. Like Mick, I feel like has some potential, but
yeah.
obviously, I mean, every other freaking team has their roster.
Mhm.
But I mean, he who shall not be named, kick it, like get out of here. So I feel like he should keep his job. He's trying his best, and I do feel bad for him. Like there's people I don't feel bad for, but I kind of feel bad for him.
You've-
What do you think?
I don't know. Like I'm similar to you when it comes to this team because I'm just like, ugh, hopefully with all the cost caps coming in, it can change things, but they just like really need it together. I think my bigger concern though, and Aldos, who is a YouTuber who's part of like he has his own stuff, but he also is part of the Veloce team. He has a great video on his concern, which is just that a lot of this season, a lot of the accidents that Haas got into, both Haas drivers, were because they were competing against each other and neither one of them wanted to let up on the lead. And
Yeah.
he had a really good point in his YouTube video where he was saying that that's going to be the crux. Like if Gunther Steiner can't get a hold of that, then that team is not going to make it any further. So we'll
Okay, I can
see.
agree with that. I can agree with that.
We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just at least Mick Schumacher finished the race. Okay. Like that seemed to be a feat today because of how many
Yeah,
people did not finish the race.
I know. Okay, looking into Alfa Romeo and Williams, lap 27, poor Kimi hit the barriers, and has a braking issue. So we kind of hope he can finish the race, but then it happens. So Kimi ends up not finishing. He gets a standing ovation in the stands. So I feel like that's very sad for like your final race.
Oh,
But I'm also
100%.
like, Kimi also, when he didn't finish in Monaco one year, just walked to his yacht. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, he's probably like, it happens. It's racing, right?
That's what I thought
So
too. Like, I mean, I think he's probably wanting something better, but at the end of the day, there's like nothing
yeah,
you can do. So,
exactly. So I mean, that is sad, but that's the end of Kimi Räikkönen. And it was nice to kind of see I loved the sticker he had on his car saying, Kimi will leave you alone now. Because in every radio call, he's like, I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. So I loved that. Lap 27, George Russell, his power cuts out. He's out. So he's probably just wanting to get his Mercedes career started as soon as possible. That's where I'm at with George.
Yeah, it was interesting because I will say, I think this entire race, one of the things that was lacking was like we just didn't have a lot of view from any other people's perspectives until things were going wrong for someone. So, what I mean by
Yeah.
that is primarily we were looking at, Max, Lewis, Valtteri every now and then, Charles every now and then, but everyone else, like we didn't really see anything from them until you see George Russell like at
Spinning
zero
out.
kilometers an hour in a corner, and you're like, what is happening? The good news is though, George did somehow get enough power to safely get back to the pits, so there wasn't a there wasn't a safety car or anything. He just handled it and got out there, so that was good.
Yeah, just made like trundled down the
Yeah. So
circuit.
slowly.
Poor guy. And then Giovinazzi is out and forces a yellow flag. Sad for him as well on lap 38. Again, his last race in Formula One.
Yeah, that killed me too because I was like, dude, this is not good.
Yeah,
Um, but it was not their day today at all.
no.
At
And I
all.
feel like a lot of the teams felt that too. They were like, it's a Red Bull Mercedes day. Like, not that it's not even like worth it to try, but also like,
Mhm.
you know who you're focusing on. But
Exactly.
with this yellow flag, this allows Red Bull to pit. So Max is getting new tires. Max got a lot of new tires today, actually,
He did. And it was
like
this little
flashing
like
back.
head to head between Williams and Alfa Romeo. Like I say that in they didn't fight each other, but it's both of these teams that caused issues that then kind of played in favor of Red Bull a little bit.
Yeah. So then, yeah, lap 54 is when I think the real drama starts.
Yeah.
Um, Latifi's out causing a safety car. That's when him and Mick Schumacher kind of had that head to head battle for basically last place. Um, William ends with 23 points, Latifi 7, and George with 16. So,
Yeah, and oh, sorry, I didn't even have it in here, but I didn't write down where Alfa Romeo was in the driver's standings, but just know they're at the bottom. And same with Kimi and Gio, they don't have a whole swath of points, but
yeah.
I don't know. We're gonna have a new team at Alfa Romeo, so let's see next year what ends up happening. There's a
Mm-hmm.
new driver coming into Williams, sort of ish, Alex Albon. And I'm surprised Nicholas Latifi is staying, to be honest, because
Yeah.
this was not his race, but his accident was significant. So we're glad that he walked away from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
so excited for Alex to be back in Formula One. I love him.
Really?
Yeah, when I should have been doing schoolwork, I spent some time just watching like, so I'm a McLaren fan, but
Yeah.
I was in like this pit of just watching YouTube videos. So I was watching all the McLaren unboxed, and then it was like Daniel and Max, and Daniel was at Red Bull, which led me to Max and Alex's videos.
Yeah.
And he is just so funny and so genuine. I was like, I think you're the best. So
I think we're going to probably talk about this in our what we want to see for 2021 episode, but Caitlin and I have talked about it all season where we're just really curious to see how he handles being in a Williams, because as much as the Williams is not it is kind of a sister team to Mercedes, the way that AlphaTauri is to Red Bull. Just the relationship between AlphaTauri is way stronger than Red Bull. So I'm just curious because he's essentially moving from a Red Bull into a
To
Mercedes.
Mercedes.
So we'll see how he does.
Yep.
The next team I wanted to chat about was Aston Martin. And again, I didn't hear anything during the race about their team at all. So just it was like nothing happened. They're ending the season with 77 points, and Sebastian Vettel has 43 points and Lance Stroll has 34 points. So again, somewhere in like the back end of both the constructors and drivers championship, but again, nothing really wild from their team today at all. Like I don't even think we got a single view from their vehicles today.
I don't think so either.
Embarrassing, but
yeah, radio silence
for them.
So looking at Alpine and AlphaTauri, Valtteri loses a battle with Yuki Tsunoda.
That was like right off the start too. I was kind of surprised to see that.
Yeah. Lap 23.
Sorry, I wanted to say they mentioned this at the beginning of, or like some sort of commentary, that Valtteri is very hesitant to like really go for it when he's battling someone. So like it surprised me that he lost position to Yuki, but at the same time, I'm like, Yuki's young, right? So I feel like there's less fear a little bit. Yeah. Being like, I'm just gonna go for it. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Yuki might have also just been on like a bit of a power trip starting P4.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. So he was probably like, let's go, and just ready to rip. So then lap 23, Yuki comes in P3.
Yeah.
Which is
huge. And I think again, like you said earlier, because there's so much focus on Max and Lewis, that almost completely missed that he was holding on to P3 for quite a while and just kind of like chilling. And yeah, it was very impressive.
Yeah, good for him. Didn't hear much from Pierre. There was some battling with him and Fernando Alonso. In lap 40-ish, Fernando Alonso goes wide. Not much from Ocon. Again, pretty silent from the team. AlphaTauri ends the season in 142 points. So Yuki with 14, or Yuki's 14th in the driver's standings with 32 points, and Pierre has 110 points and 9th overall. Alpine 155, and Alonso is 10th in the standings and 81 points. Esteban Ocon's 11th in the standings with 74 points.
And I was kind of surprised to see this because I think Pierre has been so consistent all season. To see that AlphaTauri ended up finishing behind Alpine. But I think the issue is that, especially at the beginning, actually, no, Yuki was doing okay at the beginning, but that sort of middle stretch, Yuki wasn't doing so hot. And I think that point deficit was actually significant here and hurt them a lot versus Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon were pretty much in the same ranking every single time. There was, I think, one or two DNFs. Obviously, also Esteban winning, right, a Grand Prix,
Hungarian,
helps a ton with just the amount of points for the team. So surprised to see AlphaTauri behind, but I really think that Pierre has continued to do the best he can in the car. So I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like 6th is his magic number. I feel like you always look up in Pierre's in 6th place, like, or starting P6.
Yeah, exactly. And then he just hangs out there, which is unfortunate because I think he's more talented.
Yeah.
Moving on to Ferrari versus McLaren. I'm sorry, we should have rigged this differently so you would be talking about them. I think at the very beginning, Lando unfortunately went wide, and you can see it right away. Again, all eyes on Max and Lewis, but if you just like avert your eyes a little bit, you'll see that he kind of locked up just a touch, and he ended up losing a spot. And I think something similar that one of the hesitations for the drivers about starting on softs was that it was just going to be hard and you're going to have to pit early. Sure enough, by lap 14, Lando was pitting to swap into something else that could help him get towards the end. Um, Similarly, at this point, we're going to talk about it in depth a little bit more later, but Max also pitted this lap because he was also on softs. But as he was coming back into the track, I didn't know this feature, but basically, when you're coming in, you go under a tunnel, so we don't see you, you know where you're going, and you come out near turn 3. And Charles just, I don't know if he got distracted with Max coming out, but he went so wide. Like,
Yeah. Like it honestly looked like it spooked him and he was like,
yeah.
and just kind of like jetted off.
Yeah. And it wasn't like okay, he like cut a corner, he can make it back. No, he was like out of there, just so far cut the corner and gone. And I was like, oh, okay. He the commentators that I was listening to on Sky Sports were saying that he likely got distracted. I was like, maybe not. I don't know what happened there. He momentarily lost his position, but then quickly got it back. And around lap 50, devastation for freaking Lando Norris again. He ends up getting a puncture. So initially we see him going into the pits and no one knows why. And then they come over the radio and say, like, oh, he got a puncture. And lap 50 out of 58, that starts becoming a concern for Mercedes, right? Because last time, lest we forget, there was a race where literally everyone's tires blew out. So at this point, Lewis has been on his mediums much longer than his opponent has been on his new set of tires. So it's good that they got the information, but then that adds an additional challenge. And I think for Lando, it really hurt his race, right? Because to be at lap 50, get that, have to go in, get new tires and come out again. And then shortly after that, have Nicholas Latifi go off and have a safety car for multiple laps and ends up finishing the race. Like, it's just not an ideal situation for him. When he does come back out though, he ends up in like a wild DRS train with like Alonso and Norris and I think Carlos Sainz is in there. Like, there's just like a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of traffic.
So, yeah, a lot of traffic. And in the end though, and this again speaks to like, I just wish we had a better camera view. Carlos somehow ends up on the podium in P3. I feel like, yeah, totally missed it. Had no idea how he was driving or anything. They did have a camera for this race. It seems like it was almost in Charles's helmet or something. Like the view was like very intense. But they didn't have that for Carlos, so we have no idea what happened with Carlos at all.
Yeah, I feel like that was a strictly Charles thing because even in qualifying, they kept switching to that view, and I'm like, is he like rigged up with a new camera? They're like trying to get this new angle.
Yeah, I mean, seeing it from Charles's angle though, I was like, that's very scary. Like, I don't think I'd ever get used to that.
Now my anxiety went through the roof when I saw all the buttons and like I didn't even realize like he has that part of like the halo, the like main part is directly in front of them.
Yeah, and that was a complaint for the drivers when the Halo first came out. And then I truly think that after Roman Grosjean's accident, I'm not saying you should see an accident, but on Netflix, if you do watch Drive to Survive, it's there. After that accident, no one complained about the Halo because a trigger warning, I guess. But if there wasn't a Halo, like Roman Grosjean would not be alive today for sure. So it's good that we have it. But yeah, you're spot on. The view was so weird, and also just how much it was shaking because obviously they're driving really freaking fast. So it was a lot.
Yeah. And touching on like like the Halo saving lives, even I forget what race it was. I forget what it was, but when Max and Lewis hit and Max went basically on Lewis's head.
Yeah.
And Max's tire like brushed his helmet. They were saying then too, like that Halo saved Lewis.
That was this season, people. It feels like it was so long ago, but it was this season.
I know.
So now that we're done the final race of the season, the big thing was between Ferrari and McLaren is that one of them wanted to be out on top. And this time around, it was Ferrari. So they're third place in the constructors with 323.5 points. I forgot about the 0.5s. Oh, they're so ugly. Charles ended up in seventh with 159 points, and Carlos in fifth with 164.5 points. So Carlos getting that podium today pushed him way above his teammate. Again, I think that the reason why Ferrari's been here or is in third is because of the consistency of the teammates. It's normally always Ferrari, hey? Like at the end, top 10, it's somewhere in there is Ferrari, both Ferraris back to back. So
yeah,
I know that Carlos continues being underrated, but I think there just needs to be more spotlight on him because he's been so steady this season. Especially, it may not feel like it, y'all, but this is his first season at Ferrari. And he's really like handled himself in the car extremely well. So I'm very impressed. McLaren is in fourth with Lando Norris in sixth on the driver's side with 160 points. And Danny Rick has 115 points, putting him in eighth. Again, I think, Lando had I'm talking about your boy, so you can like correct me if you want, but Lando had such a strong beginning part of the season. And then I think really struggled towards the end here. Hey.
Yeah, I said to my mom and to all my friends, like he was on such a high for the first half. And then once summer break came and they were off for 2 weeks, I was like, I have a bad feeling about this. And then after Sochi, it was just downhill for poor sweet little angel.
Yeah. And I think the downside with that is as much as Daniel Ricciardo isn't that far behind Lando, Daniel Ricciardo, we know, has struggled this year adjusting to the McLaren. So I don't want to say that Lando needs to carry the team, but if Lando's not having a good time, it definitely significantly impacts McLaren's points because Daniel's just not fully comfortable in the car yet.
Exactly. I feel bad for him this season.
For Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. I think it's been humbling. Obviously, he left Red Bull, and I do think that was the right call. Then he went to Alpine. Sorry, not Alpine. What was it? Renault, which is now Alpine. And yeah, I'm just hoping he gets his feet underneath him because we've seen anything's possible, right? Like Fernando Alonso's he's in his 40s, having the drive of his life right now. So
yeah, I mean, I think Monza was good for him with the 1-2, but like one race out of how many, and I don't know. I feel bad. Hopefully next season he's a bit more comfortable in the car.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too.
Okay, the big talk of the day. Red Bull versus Mercedes.
Huge. Yeah.
Like drama. Just those two names is drama. So at the start of the race, Lewis has an amazing start compared to Max.
He like totally does, yeah.
Takes off. So Lewis leads into turn one with both Perez and Verstappen on his tail. And that's when Lando went wide and Perez was able to kind of sneak in. Turn four, Max like basically forces Lewis off the track, which we will go into in depth soon. Lewis cuts the corner and kind of remains in first. So the stewards say no investigation is needed. Lewis slowed down enough to gain, to reduce the advantage. So this is what happens kind of like when you don't clamp down on stuff like in Brazil. So drama.
Yeah.
From literally lap one, turn four.
Yeah. So what did you think about Lewis and like just what happened? What are your thoughts? So, yeah, please tell me. That's why I wrote, we will discuss this because I'm curious. Like,
yeah. So my thing is, I do think Max kind of took that turn in hopes to kind of like bump Lewis off, but Lewis could have turned back onto the track sooner, but he just took the straight and came out so far ahead. I was like, okay, Lewis, that was a little gutty of you. What do you think?
I was so surprised after the mess that was the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, that, there was so much cutting of corners, and I thought that's where they were setting some sort of precedent over Brazil, right?
Yep.
But that's what I thought was happening. And I was like, okay, so in Brazil, you cut someone off in a similar way. It doesn't matter. That's fine. But then because of what happened in Saudi Arabia last weekend, I was like, okay, no, it does matter. So
Mhm.
I was really surprised that Lewis wasn't told to give back the spot, to be honest, because as much as Lewis slowed down to reduce the advantage, when you look at the turn, it clearly looks like Max is ahead enough, but the argument from the FIA is that Lewis did have to go off to avoid a collision.
Yeah.
So again, something that we've seen all season, just Max is like braking super late or whatever and kind of forcing his opponent to do this. I thought even with that though, that it just seemed like not it seemed like quite a significant advantage that Lewis ended up getting. So I don't know. I think I don't know. We'll talk about it, but I just think the FIA and the stewards, and this is probably the biggest conversation that's happening on social right now, is just there's no consistency and it's causing a lot
Yeah.
of confusion and problems.
And in such like an expensive sport, like you would think they would have things down pat
Mm-hmm.
with no kind of, oh, we'll give it to you this time. Like this is just a warning. Like, no,
No.
this is they're driving 300 kilometers an hour. Let's have some consistency for safety.
Oh, 100%. Like it's yeah, and I am firmly with you. I think it becomes a safety issue.
Yeah.
So I was surprised they didn't have him hand it back. Even Max came on the radio at that point and said he needs to give that back to me. And then it came, the steward said no. But I don't know. I thought it was a mess.
Yeah, it was drama.
It was drama
One word,
already. Yeah.
drama. Yeah, lap one, turn four. So then by lap seven, Lewis is over 2 seconds ahead of Max. Um, Lap nine, stopping now will put the drivers like down in 11th place. So
Yeah.
Max's rear tires are starting to struggle here, and you can hear him come on the radio and say, my backs are starting to go. Bottas is kind of at this point in like P8, like he's
Completely out of play.
trundling along. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which honestly was kind of surprising. I feel like I just expected more, but
Mhm.
whatever. Perez will go like as long as he can to kind of like keep Lewis slowing down. So what was it? Who pitted? Was it, I guess Lewis pit and Perez was the race leader.
Yeah.
And Max was in third. Did they pit at the same time?
So, well, Max wasn't in third. That's the issue. So when Max went into pit,
Right.
he ended up coming out in between like a bunch of traffic.
Yeah.
So that's when
Right. And then
Perez
that's when Charles got
went
distracted.
got
Yeah.
distracted and like went to a different planet. But that's when Perez was so strong, and it was some of the best sort of defensive driving I've seen.
I agree.
Like between him and Fernando Alonso this season, like phenomenal.
Yeah.
But he like held Lewis off, eh?
I know. I'm not a big Perez fan,
Yeah,
but in that moment, I was like, whoa.
like you're doing
Like
it.
he
Yeah.
got driver of the day for me right there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It was impressive.
and yeah, so held Lewis off. And then Max kind of helped Max out, got a slipstream, and then basically just pulled over to the side of the road and let Max fly by.
Mm-hmm.
Max on the radio came on, kind of like thanking his teammate, saying Checo's a legend, which I love that. Like that is the
Yeah.
ultimate teammate.
I don't know. I think we haven't heard a lot of team related things between the two of them. So to hear that was really great. I
Yeah.
did throw it in here, but there is a journalist called Chris Medland. I think we talked about it last episode too. But Perez slowing Lewis Hamilton up cost him nearly 6 seconds on the lap that Perez was like trying to slow him
Yeah.
down for. So it's significant and something that helped his teammate out a lot.
And 6 seconds is huge in F1.
Huge, huge, exactly.
Yeah. So thanks to Perez, Max kind of gets up there. there's so much traffic for like 4 laps between 45 and 49,
It was
both
insane.
for Lewis and Max. Like, it was crazy. Um, and then Verstappen needs DRS to kind of get through that DRS train that he's stuck in. And then Perez on lap 56 needs to retire the car. I don't know why.
Okay, so I looked this up on Twitter a little bit later, and it looks like there was just a reliability issue. So they didn't think that the car would make it. And then their concern
Interesting.
became not about Perez's race and whether Perez could finish in the points. It was more like, we don't want you causing another virtual safety car, a safety car, like any yellow
Yeah.
flags that could screw things up. And something I should note here is that during this time, Lewis is like okay, so this is the issue. Lewis is in first, and then there's that DRS train that we mentioned earlier, and then Max. So Max has to get through all of those people to then go after Lewis. And I think that, I don't know if Sky News said that with the amount of laps that we had left or something, Max needed to take zero 0.8 seconds. He needed to be faster, basically, than Lewis by 0 0.8 seconds. And that just wasn't really happening. So at this point of the
Yeah.
race, with the DRS train that Lewis had to get through and now Max has to get through, um, it just looked like it wasn't going to happen at all. And that was
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh. I will say I also heard that pre-race,
Mhm.
Christian Horner and Perez were basically just, their discussions were, how can we help Max?
Yeah.
So, I mean, good for him, whatever. And I also heard on the radio when they were like, "Oh, Checo, we need to retire, like, box, we need to retire the car." He was like, "What?"
What? Yeah.
So I thought that was so funny. It was like
He-
commentators, and you just hear like, "Wait, what?"
like,
So
why? Yeah, he had no
yeah,
idea.
why? So leading up to the final lap, Max takes it.
Yeah.
It's huge for Red Bull and Max. Christian Horner is crying. Mercedes is gutted. Lewis doesn't win his 8th world championship. So the luck definitely played in favor for Red Bulls,
Mhm.
aka Nicholas Latifi.
Antonio Giovinazzi, making it so that it's easy for
Yeah.
them to pit and not lose, full 22 seconds, only 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you also, kind of sidetrack, did you also think
Yeah.
that they were driving in slow-mo once the safety car was ending?
Well, because, okay, we're gonna get into this, but I think that everyone was fucking confused. Like, everyone
Yeah.
was so confused about what was happening because on the radio that we were listening to, we were hearing something completely different. Like, everything was so confused. And obviously, when a safety car comes out, you need to drop your speed, I think 40%, right? Of the
Yeah.
speed that you're driving. So it does look slower than what you're used to. But it was just very confusing about what was happening. And it did look like slow motion for sure. Like, I was just like, I just don't know what's happening. And I also don't know how Max got this far ahead. Like, it just was fully just very confusing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a
Because
mess.
Max, yeah, when Max pit in that safety car, I
Yeah.
think it's the average pit stop in a normal lap is like 22 seconds,
Yeah.
but in a safety car it's 14.
Yeah.
So shutting off like a handful of seconds there. Because even on the radios, Lewis is kind of like, "Where's Max?" And they're like,
Yeah.
he was, let's say, like 14 seconds behind, and then he was 12. And
Yeah.
Lewis said, "How did it get to 12 seconds?"
And it was because
So
of that. And also, he got on
yeah,
way better, quicker tires versus Lewis's worn ones. So there's
yeah,
a lot at play there.
yeah. So that's when you hear the stress in Lewis's voice, I think. He was like,
Yeah.
"How did that happen?" Um, so yeah, like huge congrats to Max for winning his first
World
championship.
champ.
I was, I'm like, I think Max is a bit of a villain. Like, I think he's just a
Yeah.
little evil. So I was like, but it's also nice to see him win. So I was mostly cheering for Lewis, but I was happy to see Max win. Like, I wasn't gutted.
Yeah. I think just obviously this is Formula One, so there's so many things that are unpredictable. But when it came down to like the just before Nicholas Latifi's yellow flag, I was like, oh, this is fine. Like this is in Lewis's hands, because if
Yeah.
he needs to get that 0.8 seconds, like it's not going to work. Like the Red Bull is truly just not fast enough, and Lewis is just so far out ahead. And I'm like you, I think I get some, like, I think Max is fine. At the end of the day, I was just like, it's exciting. One of these two had to take it, and they
Yeah.
both deserve it. And the cards just kind of fell in favor for Max. Mercedes thinks differently. We'll talk about that later. um, but I was upset for like 30 seconds. Then I was like, this is sports. Like, this is what sports are all about. Um, Mercedes did end up taking the constructors, which is, good for them. But,
Yeah.
and also that helps them get more money, which is a big thing. Like winning drivers is, the national glory. Everyone loves it. But when it comes to money from Formula One, if you get the constructors, you make way more money. So
Yeah.
that's important. But yeah, I think it was similar to you, where I was like, I don't like love this guy because I think he's kind of arrogant. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm like, it had to be one of you, right? So
Yeah. And like you can't argue that they didn't have an incredible battle all season. Like
exactly.
he definitely earned it.
Hmm.
Some like questionable moves in my opinion, but
Yeah.
congrats to Max. So ultimately the FIA need to figure it out.
Yeah.
Um like
Yeah.
fast within 98 days, which is when Bahrain is 98 days from now. March
Yeah.
30th is the first race of the next season. So it's all about Max and Lewis, but AlphaTauri really came through. P4 for Yuki, like we mentioned, and P5 for Pierre. Bottas is in P6, Lando's in P7, Alonso 8th, Leclerc, Vettel, Danny Rick, Stroll, Schumacher is kind of the ending tail, and then the DNFs are Perez, Latifi, Giovinazzi, Kimi, and Russell. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I feel like we should have more energy about Max. It is exciting. He's the first Dutch driver to win. Huge for Red Bull, Christian Horner. But I think the reason why there's some hesitation is because of that ending call and just the general confusion.
yeah,
I did listen to a few interviews with Max, and he was just really happy, emotional. The Dutch fans were losing their goddamn minds. He did say that luck was in their favor and that he thanked Checo. Did you hear when he like came on the radio? He was like, "I want to be a Red Bull forever," but then like,
yeah. Can
if
we
they'll
do this
have
for the
me.
next 50 years? Yeah,
So it's just a good pairing for him. And I just thought it was funny when he was like, "Oh, if they'll have me, of course." So I'm like,
yeah.
I think that
Christian
they will.
Horner's like writing up a 90-year contract in the
Contract.
bag.
Yeah. I think they'll have you. Like, I think you're fine. And he had some, fair, kind words to say to Lewis. And I think what was interesting though is at the end of, the giant big press thing celebration, they all have to do press where they're like sitting down. I don't know what to call it, but anyways, they're sitting
Press
down, and
conferences.
there you go. And he was asked about, just what happened in this weird safety car situation. And he said, and I quote, everything was clear. Like, why wouldn't we start the race and start racing that way? And then when he was asked about Mercedes, and we'll get into why was asked about Mercedes, he said he wouldn't comment on anything Mercedes was doing. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little sassy.
Definitely a little sassy. I don't
And
think there's
even with
any
his,
like love lost between, as much as they
oh
were kind to
no,
each other in the end. I'm like, I don't know.
yeah. Even with the comment last week of like, they don't deserve their name in my mouth or whatever he said, I was like, ooh, okay.
Right.
But anyway, he's a little grumpy. Um, and then Carlos is like obviously very happy with his podium P3. Again, very underrated and
Yeah.
not highlighted enough on TV, I think. Um, like yeah, we wish we had a better look at his race. He's ultimately very happy for Max, which is nice to see.
Yeah, and something I noted a little bit farther down somewhere is that Carlos was also confused by the race restart again, which we'll talk about at the very end, but just speaking to the confusion that happened with the safety car and how it was handled. So he was confused about that too. He mentioned it in an interview later on, but I don't know. It's kind of insane. The camera cut and Lewis, it took a minute for him to get out of his car. He finally gets out of the car and then goes beeline straight for his dad. And his dad, I don't know what he was saying. I wish we were on a fly at the wall for that.
I know.
But you could tell from his face when he started walking towards his dad that he was still like very much like, what the fuck just happened? Because he led this Grand Prix the whole time and lost it in the last lap, like the last 30 seconds of a lap, essentially. So he looked shocked, and I don't know what his dad said, but I think it grounded him a little bit more, and he looked more like himself after. Around that time is also when I saw Sebastian Vettel and Mick Schumacher go over and like give him a little like hug and like you okay, you like got this, dude. But Lewis Hamilton's dad, talk about a good sport. He went straight over to Max and congratulated him. I did mention that, Max's dad was there too, and Lewis's dad congratulated him too. We're never going to talk about Max's dad. I think he's like a really terrible person. That's a podcast episode for another day. But
yeah, he's terrifying.
He's actually terrible. So we'll never mention his name on this podcast ever.
He who shall not be named, take two.
Seriously, like part 2. When Lewis is interviewed, he thanks his team. He doesn't really address he congratulates Max as well and Red Bull, and says that it's a really big feat. And then ends it with, the pandemic is still happening, with Christmas coming up, just everyone stay safe during the holidays. Oh Lord. Okay.
I know. So kind of like going into, I mean, at least these were like the Sky Sports commentators. So Damon Hill says that the FIA is running motor racing in a way that he's never seen before, and Red Bull took that risk. And you can kind of hear that in a radio conversation between Michael and Toto, with kind of the controversy that I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. But you kind of hear him, like Michael Massey, say, this is motorsport racing, like deal with it. basically. And Toto's like, what? Okay. Speechless.
So. I don't know, but you're spot on. Red Bull took all the risks today. It was just trying to recover, right? It was, let's pit him now, let's try this, let's do this. They threw everything at the wall hoping that something would work out, and it did work out for them. Nico Rosberg also was part of the Sky Sports team. It's good to always see Nico back. I think he's so fun because he just cuts through all the BS and like doesn't care. He had a lot of flags. So he mentioned that Michael Massey, the fact that he can decide what he wants and not follow a written document, is really not good, because Mercedes is making decisions based off of those regulations. So when they're deciding whether to pit Lewis, whether to keep him long, whether to do whatever, they're looking at those regulations, right? They need to make sure they're sticking to them. So with Michael Massey kind of deciding whatever works is not the best. He also said that they need to create better rules in general to prevent people from going off the track, specifically. So his idea, let me know what you think about this, but he said that every time someone goes off track or tries to push someone else off track, that you just cut power to the engine. Do you think, he's like, that would deter people? And I agree.
Also kill people.
Right. I'm just like, I don't know about that, but like, I get it.
Yeah. I feel like that would be a consistent he who should not be named in George Russell incident in the Saudi Arabia race. Like, if you just kind of cut power and you're slowing down, someone could just come right up behind you going 200 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think,
I mean, it would deter people, but
I don't think it's
also too risky, I think.
Great. It's not a great idea, but I was like, hey, like I said, he's just out here saying whatever. He also said that he's excited to see Russell be alongside Hamilton next year. They talked a little bit about Valtteri and how Valtteri, so Valtteri and Lewis are the most successful partnership in Formula One history, I believe, at this point. So that's great. But the thing is with Valtteri's really good on qualifying. He's like so good. But when it comes to race day, he just doesn't have the same pace as Lewis Hamilton, like even close sometimes. Like the consistency isn't there. So Nico Rosberg mentioned that. And then he also mentioned that just Valtteri gets a little nervous. Like he's not about to send it down a
Yeah.
corner, or like he just doesn't, he's not that aggressive when it comes to really going for it. So seeing Russell be his number two, not the number two, I think Mercedes will make that decision halfway through the season, but to see Russell alongside Lewis Hamilton will be great. He also mentioned this. Did you see Russell's Twitter at all right after the race ended?
Yeah. And I was taken back,
Russell was
like speechless.
pissed. Russell was so pissed. And sorry, I'm gonna try and see if I can pull it up. But basically, Nico was saying that he's surprised Russell was so vocal on Twitter, that Russell dropped the PR act and just said what he wanted to say. And I believe Russell said, "This is unacceptable," right? In all capital
Yeah.
letters. And yeah, this is unacceptable, all capital letters with 4 exclamation marks. Um, and then he followed it up with, "Max is an absolutely fantastic driver who has had an incredible season. I have nothing but respect for him, but what just happened is absolutely unacceptable. I can't believe what we've just seen." And what he's talking about is that race restart tied to the safety car.
Mhm.
Yeah, we know that they're part of like the little like quadrant, like the gaming crew, right? Is Max part of that
Yeah.
too? I don't know, but like maybe it might be awkward going forward a little bit.
Yeah, I think Lando kind of games more with Max than like George, Charles, and Lando.
Yeah.
Like I think they had like a little friendship kind of outside of that group.
Okay.
But yeah, you can George was pulling Team Mercedes there.
Yeah, for sure. He was
Yeah.
fully ride or die. Like,
Yeah, he's buttering Lewis up for next season. He's like, I got your back, bro. I got you. So yeah, that was more drama. And honestly good for George for speaking up, because
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
like drop the PR act and it's like say how it is.
And say what we're all thinking, which is just what is going on. And uh we'll talk about it a little bit more, but for me, I want to make it clear, like this is not a knock on Max at all. Like
No, no.
great season, but it's more like there's no consistency, and that's the issue.
Yeah, yeah. So then moving on to Jensen Button, obviously another Sky reporter,
Yeah.
says Massey just wants to race. All
Yeah.
the principals are guilty for talking to him too much and pleading their case, which
Yeah.
I do agree with. And then kind of like tells a story about being up until 3 a.m. and going home and finding Kimmy alone in his house.
It was such a random thing. They were like, talk about your favorite Kimi Räikkönen stories. And then that's what he said. He's like, I was out on a night until 3 a.m. and I went home to find Kimi alone in my house. And I was like, okay.
Okay, next.
Miss you, Kimmy. Kimmy's just living his own
Yeah,
life. Apparently, though,
yeah.
if you get like a couple beers in Kimmy, he doesn't stop talking. So clearly we're
Well,
missing.
I saw a video of, it was one of like the motorsport awards, and Kimi Räikkönen just had like a good time that night, had a couple drinks, and just like wanders up on stage and is like pointing at Sebastian, and he's like, yeah, and they're like, Kimi is having a great night, and then you see his wife like just filming from her table. I'm like, yeah, he's probably a
So
great time.
cute. Oh my gosh, I love that. We finally hear from Christian Horner, and it's so funny because he said thanks to Latifi, which honestly accurate. Like there was no way they would catch Lewis Hamilton the way that it was going. So yes, he also credits Lewis Hamilton, mentioned that his team strategy was the best. Unsure if he can call that, but like true, fine, whatever. That the stewards made the right call and Max got the job done, and having these great opponents pushed us to be better. His wife, the amazing Jerry Hallwell, aka one of the Spice Girls, aka is it which Spice Girl is she? Why is my
Um,
mind blanking? I was gonna say
Ginger
baby.
Spice.
There we go. I was like, she's
Ginger.
not baby. She's not baby.
No.
She hopped on as well. And then she said she's really, really proud of Max and the team. And this was the hardest season that Christian's ever gone through, which I don't doubt. Like we've seen just how
Mhm.
neck and neck it's been. So yeah, that just the two of them chatted away, and I don't know, it was nice to see Jerry. She looks the same, frankly,
I know. It's
and
teeny tiny,
but
cute.
so tiny. Yeah. I made a note here and I realized it's not going to make any sense, but I don't know who the technical person is at Red Bull, but I found that his comments were interesting. He flat out said we just got really lucky with
He also
everything.
talked like this. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, pick it up.
It's
Pick it up here.
very, very slow. And I was like,
Yeah.
sir. um, he said reflecting on the full season, he thinks Max deserves the win, but he also thought going through that he felt like he was gonna have a heart attack. So
I mean, did we all in that last half lap?
yeah, I was fully sitting up in a bed being like, what is going on?
Yeah. Um, my headphones are gonna die quickly. I'm just gonna take them out.
Okay, that's fine. I I can hear you now. It's a little bit it's quite quiet on your end though.
How about now?
Perfect.
Perfect. Sorry. My head.
No worries.
How are you gonna die? Okay, so Toto is nowhere to be found post race.
Nowhere.
He's busy drawing up protests, likely getting ready to sue someone and everyone on Red Bull.
Yeah. And I thought that was so funny though, because I guess Christian like went looking for him to shake his hand, and like Toto was just nowhere to be found. And it was for these reasons. I joked
Yeah.
and wrote, oh, he's likely gonna get sue someone. And that's kind of what seems like it's happening. Basically, as soon as this happens and Toto can't be found, there's some rumblings that Mercedes was going to put into protests.
Mhm.
And sure enough, that actually ended up happening. But we don't learn too much about it. We cut back to the drivers. So Charles, he said he was a little unlucky in today's race. I feel like we hear that from him often, no?
Yeah, that's his go-to line, I think.
Yeah. And I think in fairness, like I don't think he's had the best season in terms of luck, but like I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, but he
Yeah,
also said that a rivalry like Max versus Lewis is just really good for the sport
for
because
sure.
it moves them all along, makes more headlines, more people pay attention. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Netflix is going to have a healthy stream of income coming in.
Right.
um, and then we pan over to Lando Norris.
Yes,
So
boy.
they ask him kind of like, what's your opinion on the kind of like restart there? And he's not too sure about the call by the FIA, but obviously gives his congratulations to both Lewis and Max. He says Lewis is kind of the guy he's always looked up to in Formula One. But he's also really close friends with Max, like they're closer in age and did some karting together. So congrats to both, which is sweet.
Yeah. And Esteban Ocon, again, we only get like 15 seconds with him. He said, well, one of them had to win. So, like,
10 to the next driver.
thank you. Great.
Quality comment. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Alonso kind of says what a crazy race that was.
Yeah.
Again, like Lando, not really sure what the call was by the FIA. So some confusion throughout the drivers.
Yeah. And then we have Sergio Perez. He said that this year he's gotten a good level of improvement in the car. So to use his arm specifically, he's, it was like the upward hockey check mark that you see. And
Yeah.
he's excited for next year. And it's interesting because he made this note of like, both of these race drivers are so great. And I didn't want to be the one that was like changing the outcome in some way, but that he was going to do what he needed to do for his team. So
Mhm.
as like a fellow driver, maybe he didn't feel the best about stopping Lewis in the way that he was doing it, but he did it because of his team.
Yeah.
And making sure that Max, has more of a shot or whatever. But I thought it was interesting that he said that. So like morally may have not fit his box, but it was just like the right thing for him to do.
Yeah. Plus, Christian probably would have been on his back if he kind of didn't
Yeah, said that
anyway.
he didn't want to do. Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Um,
I'll go right into Bottas quickly.
Yeah.
Um, hasn't really like seen Toto or Lewis or anyone yet. So he's a little bummed. He feels like he lost the championship.
Yeah.
He really felt like Lewis deserved it today. Kind of like gives him more time and says it's time for something new, as we know he's going to Alfa Romeo next year. So
Mhm.
he brings up the fact that they're the most successful pairing in F1. Um,
Woo!
I know. And then runs into a pool and says goodbye to his team.
I know. The juxtaposition was so funny. Like Toto, nowhere to be found because he's about to sue everyone. Valtteri Bottas running, being showered with
Yeah.
champagne into a pool. I was like, this is crazy.
Cannonballing in a
Yeah.
pool.
Yeah.
I know.
But it's it's one of those things. I don't know. It's sad to see him go because I did like the pairing a lot. I talked about this so many times, but Valtteri Bottas on TikTok is the best. I don't know who's gonna replace him. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. Like, I don't know who's gonna
Um,
be the new content king. I don't know. But hopefully Alfa Romeo can use him on their social team.
yeah, maybe they can pull in more sponsors.
Exactly. There was
TikTok
a
sponsors them.
there was a little interview with George Russell. He said he's just really happy did what they did and took P8. Is that even accurate in the constructors? He said P8. I'm not sure if that's real. But again, similar to Valtteri, he's just looking forward to his next chapter. I'm surprised the reporter didn't press him a little bit on his tweets, but the way that everything was edited, I just wasn't sure if like Russell had already tweeted and then he was doing the interview, or if he tweeted and then like I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. I
The
feel like I feel like a lot of those interviews were just kind of focused on like they probably asked him, but just cut it to
Yeah,
do the reaction to like the drivers or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, Williams did come eighth in the constructors.
There we go. How great.
Yeah. Guess who's in 10th?
Haas, what's
It
your
literally only says Haas F1 team Schumacher. Oh, that's not going to load.
Jesus?
So he who shall not be named did not even make it to the list. Anyway. um, and then Kimmy, things like that happen. Like I said, he was probably like, there's nothing I could have done. He's looking forward to living a normal life. So it was nice to see kind of at the end, he's holding hands with his wife, his daughter's on his shoulders with their little son, holding his wife's hand, walking out of the paddock. So
Yeah, it was something that he mentioned that it's just so impossible to plan things because of the schedule that they're on. And also because, if you have one bad weekend or something, then you have to be back with the team talking, trying to figure out what happened. So even if you know that you won't be free on the weekends, like even the in between time, it doesn't really exist. So it was so sweet to see them walk off. But we'll talk about Yuki and Pierre. And then I have a question about Kimmy for you afterwards.
um okay, so yeah, Yuki very happy for being P4, feeling prepared and ready for the next season. And I think the last couple races he really showed his kind of like drive in F1.
100%. And then closing with Pierre, he said the championship was crazy and is crazy. And he just gives a shout out to Honda because, as we all know, I think this is normal for Honda, apparently. Every time they win, they leave. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Honda is exiting the sport. We covered it several episodes ago, y'all. Like, we've had so many now. But with Honda specifically, they have large sustainability goals that they want to meet, and being a part of Formula One, though Formula One is moving their own sustainability goals forward, it just will not fit their mandate. So they are leaving. However, some of the personnel will be staying kind of in the in between time to help Red Bull get on its feet. So there's still a bit of a relationship there. It just won't be what it is currently.
Yeah.
My question for you about Kimmy is, do you think Kimmy is completely done racing forever, or do you think he'll move to like IndyCar or Le Mans or, something like that?
I feel like for at least a couple of years, he's going to take a break. He has like his kids are quite young, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like it's not the end, but he might take some time. How about you?
Yeah, I think he'll take some time. right? Like at the end of the day, it's been it's just so hard. Like all of this is so hard. So take a break,
And
live your life,
yeah,
hang out with your kids, come back later. I don't think
yeah.
there's any harm. Look, we're seeing that with Fernando Alonso, right? Like Fernando
I was
took a
gonna
break and now
say
he's
pull
back.
an Alonso and just
Yeah.
come back. So
So now we're going to get into just the massive controversy that still has not ended. And we are several hours now post race. And frankly, I don't think we'll end for a long time. So we mentioned it throughout the tail end of this episode, just that safety car and specifically the protest that Mercedes put in. The first one was that Max overtook during the safety car, which like I didn't see it being bad. But the second thing is that the FIA itself didn't follow their own regulations, which is that under a safety car, if the people have been lapped, so that little DRS train that we were talking about that was behind, that you need to let all of the cars through, which includes like people beyond the DRS train. So in this case, it was Lewis in first, the random DRS train from 3 to 1, 4, 5, 6, or 7th position. And then there
yeah.
was Max behind that. And behind them was a bunch of other people that had been lapped. So all of those other people, as well as that little DRS train, were supposed to be allowed through. And if that had happened, likely the race would have ended before there could be
Under
another
safety
start.
car. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what's funny is that I have this question for you, but Martin Brendel said that it's a lawyer's job to sort this out. And sure enough, Mercedes went off to the stewards with a barrister. They brought a lawyer. They had a lawyer with them, just prepared for everything. I don't know. And then we're just kind of seeing the fallout of that right now. But my question for you, Courtney, is hypothetically,
Mhm.
what I can tell all of you is that the FIA has dismissed both claims. So the overtaking on the safety car, which I think was like pushing, like I think that was a bit much. Like I don't think they would have gotten that one. And the second one, which is basically that they didn't follow the right regulations and that it was the steward error versus the teams. So FIA dismissed both of them. Mercedes said they're going to go fight this again with an appeal. So my question is, do you think, like, how would they remedy this if the FIA didn't follow the right procedures? Like, if the FIA is wrong, what do you do? Like, how do you fix this?
I had this conversation with the kind of group that I was watching this morning too. Like,
Yeah.
what happens? Did they revoke Max's title?
I don't know. And to be frank, I don't know if that even is fair. And I think the reason why it doesn't feel fair is because they both drove so well this season, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like it was such a good season on both parts. And
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, either one of them deserved to win. I'm happy for Max that he won. Sad
Yes.
for Lewis. And it would have been vice versa too. Like I would have been
Yeah.
happy if this won and sad for Max because that's kind of a huge opportunity. Um, but yeah, if the FIA, if it turns out that they were in the wrong,
Yeah.
I have no idea what they would do. I have no idea. I would love to be a little fly on the wall. I feel like that's my favorite saying is to just like listen in.
Yeah.
Like, what would your remedies be?
I have no idea. So I was trying to think back of the options in my head. And I think one option, okay, so this is where it gets challenging because I saw on Twitter some people are like, well, they can just discount the whole race. Like the whole race doesn't count. But the thing is, there's all those mid-grid teams, right, that are so close in points that discounting the whole race, like cutting it out of everything and just saying it didn't exist, wouldn't work. And it's not fair to those other teams who need those points. The second thing is, even if that happened, then Max would be championship based off of his performance in the last race. So that wouldn't change anything. And then the third, I guess the second option I was thinking about was like, would you just, whatever happened before the safety car is what you consider the final finish? Maybe. And that would mean that Lewis would become world champion. But I don't know. Like, to be frank, I don't know how you fix this. Like, the
Yeah.
celebrations are done, the merch has been made. Like, I don't know how you fix this. And like Brundle said, the lawyers need to figure this out. And it looks like it is going to be going to the lawyers. Mercedes, I was just looking at their Twitter. So Toto hasn't talked to the press. Lewis has only talked to that first like post race in front of the fans interview. After that, he hasn't talked to anyone. And he said he wouldn't until he heard back from the stewards. So I think right now we're just in this really weird space. Like Mercedes has only posted about what they're going to do, which is
Mhm.
fine. But I'm like, they're not going to let this go. And they shouldn't, even if there is no remedy. Maybe this is more of a stand of like, you can't do this shit, you know?
We need consistency in this environment.
So I'll read out Mercedes' tweet from an hour ago. They said, again, this is after both were denied or dismissed by the FIA. We have lodged notice of intention to appeal the decision of the stewards under Article 15 of the Sporting Code and Article 10 of the Judicial Disciplinary Rules. I don't know what that means or what is going to happen.
Yeah. Lawyer talk right over my head.
100%. But if it does go to something like court or the arbitration or anything like that, we might not know the result for months. Like, it could be literally Bahrain and we're finding out that Lewis Hamilton is actually world champion.
That would be so like gutting for Max. Like, could you like either one of them? Like, if it went either way.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't know if anyone cares.
I know. Like at that point, yeah, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea. And it stresses me out just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because you like all we want, and I feel like as fans, all we want is consistency,
Yeah.
real racing, and like good battles.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
very confusing.
And I think the option that we talked about, that it just might be Mercedes saying, you have to stop doing this. Like, we need to put our foot down. Maybe that's it. Maybe the remedy is that Mercedes is given a promise, or, you know, or the FIA in general is being forced to actually regulate regulations and put them in place and follow them and do that. Like, I don't know. And maybe that's enough for Mercedes.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I think they would have like every other driver on the grid would have their back on that. Because
Yeah.
again, in the post-race interviews, everyone was like not sure what the call was there. Congrats to you, like congrats to both either way on a great season.
Exactly. And, you know, this isn't the only race with the issues, right? Like, we saw, what was it, last race, Lando called the pitting under, was
A
it a
red
red
flag.
flag? He called it
He wants to delete it. Go into the backspace and delete it.
There's
I agree.
that. There's been just other incidences between Max and Lewis throughout the season where it just hasn't been consistent. Where, you know, was it Sergio and Lando that went head to head, and like both of them got in trouble for something, and then Max and Lewis did something similar and then nothing happened to them. Like, there's been a lot of this. So they need to figure it out. And this brings me to my next thing. Courtney, do you think Michael Massey will have a job next year?
Maybe him and Gunther will just be out on the streets like, help me. See, it's hard because what's his name? Is it John Janto just retired as like race director? So like who's their backup?
No idea. Like,
I don't know. I feel like Michael is in some hot water and will be for the next couple months.
Yeah.
He needs a support system here. I have no idea if he'll be back.
And I think Martin Brundle grounded me a little bit, because I was like, this guy needs to be fired like yesterday. But Martin Brundle had a good point where he said, okay, look, Michael Massey, there's so many races in a year right now. He just needs more support around him. Like, it's mentally exhausting. the team principals are calling you whining about some crap, partly why it's inconsistent, frankly. And he said the same thing you said, which is, who else would you have? Like, there's literally no one else that can do this.
Yeah.
So we need to find a different solution. And I think the solution is just like, over the next, 98 days,
98 days.
set some sort of system up, rejig the regulations, be so sure, because we're also going into 2022 with new vehicles, right? Like, everything is shifting again. I don't know, but this controversy, like I said, is not over. As you mentioned, Mercedes is appealing it. So again, we may not know what's actually happening for a very, very long time.
Yeah. Poor Michael. But also not poor Michael.
Right?
I don't know.
Like, I feel bad, but I also don't feel bad, because I'm like, you get paid so much money, just like, just
and literally you can be like, oh, this is the rule. You broke it. Sorry. Not.
Yeah.
My friend was saying it was, she was a Lewis fan cheering for Lewis.
Yeah.
She goes, it was Jerry in the back paying Michael off. Jerry her Spice Girls checks. I was dying. It was so funny.
I mean, maybe, we don't know. Like, anything could be happening. Yeah. I also think that they need to cut out the complaint, like not the complaining, but yes, the complaining, like the fact that the drivers can access him, the team principals can access him like that.
Director, yeah, that's
stop. Like, it needs to end. And I think that can happen if you just have way better regulations and rules and it's clear. Like, lest we forget, last race, Red Bull was essentially negotiating what would happen with Max, which is bizarre. That's never happened in the sport.
And when Lewis kind of rear-ended Max in Saudi Arabia, we heard Ron, like one of Lewis's engineers, being like, you never told us. And he was like, well, I only have one button and I only have one finger. Like, I'm talking to 20 people and you're trying to come on my radio. It's just, they need to have more of a filtered system that the team principals can go to somebody before it's escalated to Michael Massey.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Well, that's all I got. Courtney, have any other final says on this race today?
Wow. I'm still honestly in shock that Lando started P3. And I had to wear my like $200 shirt today, which I got in a way too big of a size, but that's beyond the point. I think this race taught us a lot and taught the FIA a lot, even Saudi Arabia, going into next season. I think a lot more is going to change than we think for the better. Team principals might not agree with it, but I think ultimately in terms of safety, driving, consistency, things are going to change for the better. How about you?
Yeah. And I think you're right. This is kind of it. And it's sport. So as long as we know right now in this moment, Max Verstappen is world champion and he deserves it just as much as any other person that ends up on that podium. He worked so hard this season. So I'm not surprised by that, but I agree. I think that a lot of the changes coming into the sport will just make it better. Even with the cost cap, making it easier for the other teams to be competitive. And we'll just see. Like, there's nothing.
We'll see.
We'll see. And follow us on Instagram because that's where we'll post updates. But for our friends that are listening, for the rest of the year, you're probably thinking, are we going to take a break? Because that's a good question. Courtney's got classes. Caitlin's coming back from Hawaii. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And most people go for holiday breaks. I completely agree. We will sort of be taking one. So we are going to record an episode just about our favorite moments from the season, maybe some lowlights as well, or not so great moments of the season. It'll be more fun, more relaxed. I think it'll be fun if we can like surprise each other with it. Who knows? And then we'll probably pre-record that one and pre-record another episode just on what we're looking forward to in 2021, from the cars to the drivers to whatever, and maybe some questions that we have. And like I said, we'll pre-record all that. So then we can have a break, and come the new year, we'll figure it out all over again.
Yeah.
Get ready for the 98 days, maybe pre-record a little bit more. I don't know. Caitlin's obviously starting school come January. We'll see. There's like lots of fun things, but until then, you will have more episodes for the rest of the season, and ones with Courtney as well. So
I will be back.
yeah, I guess that's all, folks. Follow us on Instagram at Get Checkered, on Twitter at Get Checkered, on what is the TikTok at Get
Yep.
Checkered. Also, I do have a tiny like personal goal for us. We're almost near 1,000 followers, I think, on TikTok, just shy by like 40, maybe less than 40. Go follow us there. I would love to cross 1,000 before the end of the year.
Yeah.
And what else? You can also go ahead to our website. We actually have one now. There's no blogs anywhere, but it's getchecker.com. And Courtney, do you have anything else in this like wrap up that I should mention?
I think that's kind of all in terms of like our content. I just want to say thanks for letting me back on, filling in for Caitlin, and truly one of like the craziest races of the season. And yeah, what a race, what a season, what a thrill.
Right?
Yeah. So thank you
Anytime,
for
girl.
having me on.
Yeah. And I think with that, we just say stay checkered, friends, and we'll see you, or you'll listen to us in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.